Pause for a second and consider this. A structure packed with hundreds of people, thousands of gallons of fuel, and enough metal to build a small bridge not only peels itself off the ground, but spends the next 10 hours serenely cutting through the sky at 600 miles per hour. How does that lump of metal, which is heavier than a downtown office building, not just fall? To really grasp the absurdity, picture the Airbus A380. This thing's maximum takeoff weight tips the scales at nearly 1.3 million pounds. Let that sink in. That's the equivalent weight of an entire herd of African elephants, around 200 of them, stacked and somehow vaulted into the air. It doesn't just jump over a fence, it hauls that mass up to the stratosphere, 7 miles above the Earth, and keeps it there for an entire day. By every rule of thumb, this should be impossible. Yet, it's the most routine miracle of our time. And every single successful flight you've ever been on is the culmination of centuries of spectacular failures, obsessive tinkering, and the gradual cracking of nature's code. Our first clumsy attempts to conquer the heavens were simple. We filled bags with hot smoke and drifted. But that's not flying. That's floating at the mercy of the wind. In the 1800s, a British genius named George Cayley had a revelation. He broke the problem down. You need one thing to push you forward and a different shape entirely to lift you up. He was the first to truly sketch the blueprint for the modern plane. Then came Otto Lilienthal. He built wings, strapped them on, and leaped off hills, making over 2,000 flights. He mapped how air flowed over curved surfaces, often with bone-breaking consequences. He proved the data, but it cost him his life. The Wright brothers studied his work obsessively. In 1903, on a windy beach in North Carolina, they finally did it. They married controlled lift with a powered engine. Their flight lasted only 12 seconds, barely longer than a hiccup, but it was the ignition switch for the modern world. From that moment, the pace became frantic. War demanded speed and strength, swapping wood and fabric for sleek metal. The 1950s brought the de Havilland Comet, the first commercial jet, and then the 747 in 1970, a true behemoth that made global travel a reality for the masses. And then the 747 in 1970, a true behemoth that made global travel a reality for the masses. Decades later, the A380 proved that even a 500,000-kilogram machine could be quieter, cleaner, and almost eerily stable in the air. But peel back all the layers of avionics and composite materials, and the fundamental secret hasn't changed since the Wright Flyer. It all boils down to a constant tug-of-war between 4 invisible forces. Every plane in the sky is a battleground. On one team, you have weight, gravity's relentless pullback to Earth. Fighting it directly is lift, the upward punch generated by the wings. The other battle is horizontal. Thrust, the engines push forward, versus drag, the air's resistance trying to slow everything down. Imagine a perfectly balanced scale. When the upward lift exactly matches the downward weight, the plane holds its altitude. When forward thrust cancels out the drag, the speed locks in. The moment that balance tips, say, the pilot adds more thrust, the plane accelerates. If the nose lifts and the lift force increases, it climbs. No magic, just a precise dynamic equilibrium. But the million-dollar question remains, where does that upward force, lift, actually come from? You've probably heard the old explanation. Air on top of a curved wing has to travel farther, so it speeds up, creating a vacuum. That's not wrong, but it's only half the story. The real secret is how the wing, called an airfoil, aggressively interacts with the air. It's shaped with a curve on top and a flatter bottom, and it attacks the air at a slight tilt. This is the angle of attack. As air smacks into this shape, the flow over the curved top gets squeezed and accelerates dramatically. This acceleration causes the pressure above the wing to plummet. The pressure underneath stays relatively high and dense. This pressure difference, high below, low above, creates a massive suction effect, pulling the wing upward. But there's a second, equally powerful thing happening. The wing isn't just letting air pass, it's violently shoving it downward. And, as Newton famously stated, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. If the wing forces air down, the air forces the wing up. Bernoulli and Newton aren't rivals here. They're dance partners describing the same elegant physics. Lift is the baby of lower pressure on top and a massive downward push of air. That's your elephant herd elevator. The pilot's primary tool for managing this force is that angle of attack, the tilt of the wing into the wind. On takeoff, the pilot pulls back, the nose rises, and the angle increases. The air is now being slammed downward more aggressively. The pressure drop on top intensifies, and the lift coefficient skyrockets. But there's a lethal catch. You can push this too far. Increase the angle too much, and the smooth airflow over the top can't stick to the surface anymore. It detaches, breaking into a turbulent mess. The pressure difference collapses, and lift vanishes instantly. This is a stall. It's not about the engine stopping. It's about the wing suddenly forgetting how to fly. And this is where speed becomes everything. Lift isn't just tied to speed, it's tied to the square of the speed. Double your airspeed, and you don't get double the lift, you get 4 times the lift. Halve your speed, and lift craters to a quarter. That's why a plane needs a long runway. It's not just getting up to a nice cruising pace. It's using that speed to exponentially multiply the lifting power of its wings until, at a very specific moment, lift finally overcomes the plane's immense weight and the ground simply becomes irrelevant. So, when you see a jumbo jet rotating off the runway, remember it's not just the low pressure on top doing the work. That wing is grabbing a skyscraper's volume of air every second and hurling it towards the ground, and that reaction force, that upward shove, is what truly cradles the plane at altitude. So, when you see a jumbo jet rotating off the runway, remember it's not just the low pressure on top doing the work. That wing is grabbing a skyscraper's volume of air every second and hurling it towards the ground, and that reaction force, that upward shove, is what truly cradles the plane at altitude. These are high-lift devices. They do 3 things at once. They increase the total surface area of the wing, they dramatically deepen its curve, and they massively pump up that lift coefficient. The slats create a tiny slot that blasts high-energy air from underneath over the top, re-energizing the airflow and allowing the wing to fly at a much steeper angle without stalling. It's the wing's way of cheating at low speeds. Okay, but if lift is so tied to thick, dense air, why do these giants cruise 7 miles high where the air is incredibly thin? Simple. Drag. Drag is the friction of the plane moving through the air. At 40,000 feet, the air is so thin that resistance plummets. Less drag means you need less thrust to maintain speed, which means you burn dramatically less fuel. The cold air also makes the engines more efficient. It's the sweet spot where the reduced lift from thin air is perfectly balanced by the massive efficiency gains. As the plane burns fuel and gets lighter, it can even step climb higher, chasing even better fuel economy. Now, let's walk through the choreography of a takeoff. It's a precisely timed ballet of speeds. Before the plane even enters the runway, the pilots have calculated 3 critical numbers. V1, the point of no return. Before V1, you can abort. After V1, you must fly, even if an engine explodes, because there isn't enough runway left to stop. Next is VR, or rotation speed. At this moment, the pilot eases back on the yoke, increasing that angle of attack. The nose lifts, and the wing starts working its magic. Next is VR, or rotation speed. At this moment, the pilot eases back on the yoke, increasing that angle of attack. The nose lifts, and the wing starts working its magic. As the speed builds during the roll, more and more of the plane's weight is being supported by the wings instead of the wheels. At that exact moment when the calculated lift finally equals the total weight, the last bit of pressure on the landing gear vanishes. The plane doesn't leap, it just gently stops needing the ground. It's airborne. Then, the plane cruises in a state of perfect equilibrium. Lift equals weight. Thrust equals drag. It's a peaceful, powerful stalemate. But what goes up must come down. Descent isn't falling, it's a managed glide. Pilots reduce thrust, creating a controlled imbalance where lift is just slightly less than weight, allowing the plane to sink
Approaching the
gently.
runway, the flaps are fully extended, allowing for slow, safe speeds. In the final seconds, the pilot performs the flare, gently raising the nose to kill the descent rate for a soft touchdown. The instant the wheels squeak onto the tarmac, spoilers pop up on the wings like giant speed brakes, destroying any remaining lift and pinning the plane to the ground. Thrust reversers blast air forward, and the brakes clamp down. The battle is over. Every time you're sitting in that metal tube, feeling it rumble down the runway and then smoothly lift, remember, it's not defying logic. It's the universe's own rules, bent into shape by a century of human stubbornness. It's not magic, it's balance. And now that you know how it stays up, have you ever wondered about the insane amount of engineering it takes to get it to stop? I've got a deep dive on landing systems that will blow your mind. Check it out on screen now.